This is Tony, the TGR, and I'm presenting today something I call the big blind spot. It's about the intersection of money as an ethical vehicle versus a investment vehicle, and the butterfly effect that exists between the two in ways that should be common sense, but probably aren't to a lot of people out there, and the way it can cause unexpected consequences on people's lives from not really anything they're doing wrong. Now, as a disclaimer, I do use Berkshire Hathaway in my example here. This is not necessarily to discredit Berkshire Hathaway or Warren Buffett or any other investment firm as being outright malicious or evil or doing anything other than their job, which is honestly to make money. That said, it is not about these investors or their corporations so much as exploring the blind spot that exists that can come as a consequence of investment decisions that firms like this make. Currently, there appears to be an increasing disintegration between money as an investment vehicle and money as a moral ethical vehicle. Now, money, in my opinion, is an implied correctness. As an investment, as a risk, or even as a gamble, you are wagering that a certain outcome will take place and you are placing money behind that wager. And if you're right, you gain money in proximity to those in your opposition by doing so. You see this in a lot of forms. There's corporation, you can invest in a corporation stock, government bonds, real estate or real estate investment trusts, retirement accounts, brands and intellectual properties, business ventures and startups, and then backing production and distribution systems. Money also is used as a moral ethical vehicle in a value system, which again carries with it an implied correctness. This is connotated in your class and your lifestyle, in your employment and wages, in your purchases, in products you produce and sell and distribute or services you render. You are assigning a value of that, and if people are in agreement that your product or service or hourly wage is worth that value, then you are paid that worth. That again is an implied correctness. It also involves a lot of other factors like your sexual value and attractiveness, your education and resources, the ability to make a settlement or buyout in the event you're in a wrong. You're essentially trading your right for your wrong and getting out of it. And there's a big emphasis on personal freedom and personal accountability these days. But a lot of your freedom only comes from how much responsibility you can pay someone else to do, and you can only make the choices in life that you can afford the bill for making. Now, in this example, I'm going to say Berkshire Hathaway owns roughly 20% of all property on the face of the earth. Now, granted, I threw this together just before the Bank of America sell-off, so this is a little bit accidentally psychic, and I apologize for that. But let's just say it's 20% of everything on the earth, and they cash it out after a few years of record-breaking corporate profits, because that's what you do. You built those companies on this money. They want that percentage of their money back. They get a gain. That's honestly earned. But now everything outside that's worked on 100% now has to do 100% of their job on 80% of the resources they have left. Once enough instability takes place and things kind of correct and you actually get to operating on that 80% that's left, you can take the 20%, the former 20% of tangible cash, and use that to purchase 25% of this new economy. It's a quarter of what was left. This is why the Pareto principle is such a big thing in investment circles. But now, this force that owned a fifth of the world now can own a quarter of the world for free just from letting consequences play out and doing nothing about it. This becomes a sort of problem I've noticed over the last 25, 30 years of life, is that ultimately money is gaining more momentum as an investment, and it is losing more and more losing more and more influence as an ethical moral vehicle, because we're reaching a point now where the possession of the money is becoming more important than the values and ethics you're using the money to uphold. Um, and that is not a good momentum. That is not something we want to see continue to grow. Otherwise, this country is going to be overrun with monopolists, hookers, and cocaine dealers, because that's literally all of what money is going to be backing behind at some point if we continue like this hyper indulgent state of affairs. So, investors view their role in this system entirely on a mathematical basis, and they're correct. They buy low, they sell high. But the problem is that this is weightless. It's separate to the consequences of this decision. The corporations end up doing all kinds of mergers, acquisitions. Again, these are all examples of everything adjusting to running on 80% of your resources. You get surging unemployment, layoffs, terminations, inventive, creative terminations just to avoid giving layoffs and the severance thereof. The increasing costs of goods and services and capital assets. The supply and demand of labor shifts further in the advantage of those demanding labor and against the supply of labor. Employment and self-employment income is reduced because your employment class is 100% of the foundation for the spending and sale and growth potential of the economy. And you take the money out of that, you take your growth potential right with it. People take on increased debt to support these higher costs and lower wages. You see increased crime to subvert this problem. And then obviously you're going to see suicides and casualties increase as this problem grows, as well as births and marriages decrease as relationships become more and more financially unstable, along with their households. And this kind of creates a displacement in the moral ethical vehicle. See, as an investor, you buy low, you sell high, you keep and reinvest your profits. You're doing your job right. Your credit worthiness keeps going up. Your ability to leverage money keeps going up. Your relation stability keeps going up. You can acquire more property, more private equity, more intellectual properties. But yet they're completely blameless and unaccountable for the rest of the consequences because they're detached from them. Also, stockpiling more money in their pockets implies they're more correct by default, like they just can do no wrong. As I mentioned, businesses go through an adjustment period where they disclose duplicative staff roles and assets during joint ventures and mergers. I mean, joint venture is a thing they're throwing around now, which is technically different on an ownership perspective, but for the working man, the net effect is no different. If two ships are tied together and sailing in conjunction, you don't need two navigation crews. You don't need two sets of engines, Sometimes they have to take unfavorable financing terms, but they usually offset this either in raising their pricing, lowering their quality, reducing the quality of life for their employees. You get less perks at work, you get higher workloads on fewer employees. And one of two things happens. Either they reach an equilibrium and they survive it, or they don't. And if they don't, they typically get purchased or acquired by private equity firms. And then executives get payoffs for their failures. They get severance packages, and they get another notch in their I was an executive for a company for so many years, which is another notch in their belt that continues to qualify them for more and more opportunities. They only fail up. Like all of the consequences fall on the displaced workers. Everyone knows once you're unemployed, you're unemployable. If you're relegated to social welfare, if you qualify, and you're screwed if you're not. You take on increased debts until to the point where they become unmanageable, and as a result, your credit worthiness decreases. Sometimes you end up homeless, and if you're homeless, that's a crime in itself. You're basically just a useless garbage can of a person, no matter how productive you were. Your marriages and relationships dissolve over money, over stability. No cash left means you have nothing to defend yourself, nothing to redeem yourself with. You can't buy representation. You can't do anything. You're just wrong by default, whether you do anything incorrect or not. And people don't really deserve that. Displaced workers and the struggling working class do not deserve to be slapped with a moral ethical failure. And the fact that we've continued to repeatedly do so for easily 30 years now is why everybody's so tired of their jobs, of putting their all behind a company just to establish record breaking corporate profits and get the shaft for their thanks. Because that's literally what it does. We've been through this cycle at least 4 times in my adult life, and I'm only 43. You know, I have a little story here that I've known a couple people along these lines, but there was one person that they worked an honest job. They paid their rent and their utilities in full on time. They had credit cards that they paid in full all the time. They maintained their property. They were like an ideal tenant. They did everything correctly. The homeowner, independently of them, defaults on their mortgage. They can't afford their house payment and the bank seizes the house. So at this point, the homeowner I'm illustrating as the business, and the bank illustrating as the investor, the backer in the capital, because that's exactly the roles they play. The bank then forcibly evicts the renter within their rights to do so from the property with an intent to relist and resell the house. So the problem here is that now this renter has a forcible eviction on their rental history in spite of doing nothing wrong to deserve that moral ethical weight. And they have to live with the consequences of that, which is 10 years where they literally just can't apply for new housing, even though they did nothing wrong. And yeah, it kind of comes to the point of this topic and why I presented it. What can we do to rectify situations like this? What can we do to rectify the displacement of workers as a result of investment decisions? What can we do to take this moral ethical failing off of the working class that many of them have done nothing wrong to deserve, and build ourselves back up as a society with our limited economic means in a way that doesn't just continue this cycle? Because the longer it goes, the stronger money becomes as an investment vehicle, the weaker it becomes as a moral ethical vehicle. And since the importance of having the money is now becoming more important than the values that we're supposed to stand for, what adjustment do we make in our lives and our decisions to not get completely screwed over? Because I'll tell you right now, like, this Berkshire Hathaway sell-off that's actually happening, not the one depicted here, is like it's a socioeconomic atom bomb. It is a chain reaction of negative consequences across everyone, everywhere. That said, please contribute to this discussion. Contribute your ideas. I'd love to see some comments like this. If it's something that you think is important, share it. I would not recommend subscribing to my channel. This is a part of a small one-off series of presentations I'm incidentally doing because of the timing and importance of these issues. My channel for the most part is just a struggling gaming channel that I keep having to set down and go back to work because my life is just kind of always on the edge right there like that. So I would not subscribe on the basis of seeing a lot more of these. I'm only doing a handful of them, but I would appreciate your thoughts. I would appreciate sharing. Um, let's just figure this out. I wish I had a solution for this, but I guess a solution isn't going to exist until we can first correctly illustrate what the problem is. I guess that's what I'm taking the time to do with these presentations and with this one in particular. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Tony the TGR, and have a good day.